everyone, and welcome again to Building Direct-to-Consumer Insurance Apps with No Code. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to our Business Product Manager, Laurence. Laurence, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laurence Brouillette. I'm manager of the business product team at Unqork, and I am currently working with a lot of our clients on working through their different use cases and building kind of these similar assets to what you're about to see in the webinar around, the common problems that they're trying to solve for themselves in their flows in the insurance and financial services industry. So we're going to go through an example application that we built, which is kind of a simple flow for purchasing travel insurance, and then we'll have a closing Q&A session at the end. For background, I've been at Unqork for about a year and working on the business product team. Prior to Unqork, I worked at fintech startups, and previously that I started in transaction services at Citigroup. So I'm going to flip over to the demo application that we're about to do. So this demo, again, as mentioned, it is a travel insurance application that is built on the Unqork platform. So this would be in the case that a consumer is preparing to go on a trip and they want to purchase some additional insurance to be able to insure them while they're on the trip. So we're going to start off in a dashboard. This would be the view that the consumer would see. So perhaps, they've created an account, they've registered, and they would be able to navigate here to kind of see all of their policies and the information that's in place. So for example, we would be able to see any active policies they might have in place for current policies that are active, any pending policies that are potentially awaiting review by an underwriter or payment from them, or an expired or canceled policy had they chosen to cancel their policies or had policies that had lapsed. Moving back over to the active policy, here we would see also able to dig into the details of the policy. So for example, if I dig into this one right here and select the policy, it exposes some of the detailed information. I can see who the owner is, what the trip details that were provided were, and the travelers that were specified, any coverage details and additional riders that have been selected, and the beneficiaries that were given. And then I would also be able to see the policy history. So for example, if we look at the policy that we're selecting right now, this is a reinstatement, meaning I might have canceled it and then chosen to reinstate the policy. So if I go to policy history, there we can see the original policy history and we'd be able to kind of dig into similar details about the policy. So all of the versions, once it's maybe canceled or reinstated or as a renewal on existing policy, would be fully tracked so that you'd have full history details of any policies that are linked to each other. From there, I could also maybe choose to cancel my policies, or I could choose to make some changes to the policies for endorsement. So now I'm just going to actually jump into a flow for purchasing a new policy, which is going to open up this flow right here. Again, this is a direct-to-consumer example. So what we kind of wanted to show was something that was very light, very easy to use, very low touch. And specifically in this application, I'm going to go through something that is mobile friendly. So that is one thing about Unqork, is all the applications that are built on it are meant to be responsive. So they'll look equally as good on a desktop as a phone, or for example, an iPad. So I could, right now I'm in phone view. I could switch to an iPad view and the screen would adjust. And so it's just kind of a good way to build consistent experiences across devices. You build it once and then people are able to use it across different devices with low to no changes at all. So I'm going to start by filling out some information about myself as the applicant. I could go in and type my name, but I'm not going to demonstrate one of the built-in components in Unqork, which is the license scanning component. So in this case, I'm actually going to bring up a picture of the barcode of my driver's license and have that be uploaded. In the case that I was actually on a phone, I would actually be able to take a picture of my driver's license and also upload it in the same way. And you see what's actually done is that it's parsed the information from my barcode and pre-filled in my name. You can also extract the information like my date of birth, any kind of attributes that would be stored in the driver's license barcode, like hair color, eye color, license number, things like that could be used for identification. So this is kind of a good way to make it easy, simple for users to upload information at once without having to key everything in manually. And then I'm going to go ahead and provide my email. Here we see some examples of some of the built-in data validations that are on Unqork. So as I'm typing in my email in this email component, it will make sure that I type in a proper email format. And then here we're gonna use our address component, which is making a call to the Google API to pull up my address. So I'm gonna search for Unqork, and you see your address actually gets pulled right up and everything gets pre-filled. So again, very easy, very low keystrokes. Then moving on, I'm now going to specify if the policy owner and the applicant is the same. And since I click yes, then all the information gets ported over to further reduce data entry, or I could have gone through a similar flow for the policy owner, like that they were a different individual and provided their information. But in this case, I've copied over my name, my email, my address, so I can just click and breeze right through. And then at this point, we're going to start to provide information about the trip that's going to be used to generate a quote. So I'm just going to name this trip my trip, and I'm going to start by adding a destination. So let's say I'm going to go to Rome, and then I'm going to make my trip start, next week, it's the holiday week, and then I'm going to have it end a few days later. And then I'll say, no, this is not a recurring trip, and then I'll save that destination. So now I've added my destination. We see the start date and end date that I've provided. We also see the duration of my trip that we've automatically calculated from the dates, and all of these details are things that are going to be used in my quoting process. Then I'm able to add some travelers. So first I'll add myself as a traveler. And I will specify my date of birth in this case. It'll just make me quite young. And then my gender, and provide some additional details. These then traveler details are also going to be used for the underwriting process and in basically generating a quote for me. And then I'm going to add in a second traveler as well. So let's say I'm going to travel with my friend John. So I'm going to have his information here, maybe put some details in the past. And then his gender, country of citizenship, similar information, and there you go. So now I've added these two travelers, and these are going to be factored into my quote, and all of their details are captured here. And then now I've gone to the place where I'm going to see my quote. So you see I've actually been generated a quick quote right away based on the trip details that I provided and the traveler details that I provided. And we've set some default deductibles and policy limits, but then I have the option to play around with it, see my options. If I reduce my deductible, how does my quote change? If I increase my policy limit, how does that affect my quote? Things like that. So this is kind of a nice view, especially on mobile heavy sliders. The individuals can play around with maybe the different options and decide, I'm going to go with the default quote that is with this deductible and policy limit. What we've seen a lot of companies do is they'll set these to what is usually the most attractive, a popular option, or to the option that they're trying to kind of attract most clients to, so that it's kind of set to the default. And if I navigate here and I'm like, yeah, $84, that sounds great, nice and easy for my trip, and I'm going to move forward with that. Now here we have the ability to add some additional sports riders, so you can see the beginning of the rider, some of those content, they could read more and see the further information. And then if I were to select this, for example, it might kick off my quote to be reviewed by an underwriter, and it would also change the quote price. But I'm going to go say, no, I'm not going to add a sports rider. But actually, yeah, I want to add a dental and vision rider. So now we see that my quote price has changed. Then I'm going to move forward to the next one. Do I have a pre-existing condition? In which case I'll say no as well. And then now it brings me to being able to provide some beneficiary details. So I'm going to name my beneficiary, and I'm going to provide my beneficiary's email, and then just specify the relationship. So we kind of kept the initial steps very simple so that it would be, you wouldn't have to enter too much information in order to get a quote, and then these additional kind of things that maybe might be needed to fully finalize your policy come at the end, but we've kind of shown the attractive quote as early as possible in the flow to kind of reduce the drop-off. And then now I get to the final summary screen where I'm able to review all my details. I see all the information that I've entered, the riders that I've selected. I'm able to review my final quote with all of the adjustments made. And then I'm going to just click next to finalize everything. So since I haven't triggered anything that might trigger me off to an underwriter, I actually have the options to pay with card. So here I can provide my card information. This is a Stripe integration in a sandbox environment, but it connects the way that we do a lot of payments on Unqork using payment processing vendors like Stripe. So I'm going to provide some sample card details. And there you go. And then I'm going to be able to pay with my Stripe. And this will actually allows me to finish my quote and then go back to my dashboard. So if I then on my dashboard, I would see essentially all of my information and all my policies right there. If my policy was again pending an underwriter, I would see it show up here, and I would be able to wait for the underwriter to approve it, and then I would be prompted for a similar Stripe payment. Now to that point, I'll actually show how we can create essentially a similar view for the underwriter. So here I've gone to a very similar dashboard that we've seen before, but this would be the idea of having an underwriter being able to instantly receive all the information I've just filled out and be able to review all the quotes that come through the flow. So here, similar to the underwriter has these different sections of things they can take a look at to kind of manage their day-to-day activities. They have the place where they can review these quotes that are pending approval. They have a place where they can review all enforced policies that have been bound and issued. They can see all the policies that have not been enforced. Maybe they've been canceled or they were denied. And then they can start to see also claims in the case that people have actually filed claims, maybe through a similar portal as the customer portal that we were looking at before, and they kind of have notified of maybe first notices of loss. So there they'd be able to kind of, again, get into the details, see the basic details of the applicant, any information that they provided about their claim, and kind of go through all of that. So again, starting to get at the idea of creating these really centralized places where people can log into and really easily manage their day-to-day. In this case, I'm going to dig deeper into the quotes application. So here I see I have a few different options for quotes. I can choose to approve them, deny them, or view more details. So an underwriter, I would probably click into view the quote and see the details. I'll see who applied, the address they provided, the trip information they provided, any coverage details that they've selected. So, you know, yes, I actually selected I have a pre-existing condition and my policy limit. They would be able to see any beneficiaries I had named. And then here we have an interesting, also out-of-the-box component on Unqork, which is our text editor. So this is often used in insurance cases in the case that maybe we want to make some changes to, or some edits to maybe legal language. Like, for example, I've declared that I have a pre-existing condition. So maybe actually as an underwriter, I want to go in and add some notes or make some changes to legal language, and I want to make edits, maybe like set additional conditions. And so this component within the screen is actually mimicking something very similar to, you know, Word doc or Google Docs, where you can track all the changes made. And then this is something that I could also send off to my legal team to review, or send to review to the customer, and also just kind of track all of those interactions within my one portal. So for this policy, I'm actually going to decide, yeah, this looks good, and I want to go through and I want to approve it. So I would click approve, and this would be completed. And then now the policy is essentially, it's been approved, and it can kind of go and complete payment by the customer that requested it, because I've gone through and I've approved it. So both views meant to be very user-friendly, very straightforward, and you know, again, this is a simple flow, but it kind of shows the possibility of things that you can build by really starting with these very user-friendly portals and really kind of layering on the functionality that would be needed. So that is the end of the demo. I guess I will flip it over for any questions that we might want to go through.
Awesome. Thank you, Laurence. There actually are a fair amount of questions, so really excited
Great.
about that. So the first question is, how long does it take to build this application?
Yeah, so this particular application, it's, you know, again, we displaying a travel insurance, which I think is pretty simple. It took about, I would say, to stand everything up, maybe 2 weeks. So just kind of building out the dashboards and the flows. We usually say for like Unqork applications, we can set up these types of insurance applications over, you know, I think a period of like 2 to 3 months, full end-to-end design, meaning starting from an idea to building out screens with you, understanding your flows, and then going through and building out the full flows in the screens and integrating to any system. So it's pretty nimble, and that's the idea. Is I think we want to make it very easy for people to stand up new things and be able to kind of build out the best products possible, especially in these direct-to-consumer cases where the user experience is so important. I think having rapid development is really helpful, because then you can try different things. You can switch out the layouts pretty easily while still maintaining the underlying application, or you can try out different, like, you know, marketing language or approaches and things like that. And it's very easy to get that out to the market quickly.
So another question we have in from the console is, can traveler info come from something like Expedia?
Yes, yeah, we have quite a few of those cases where maybe the company that's kind of carrying out the insurance portion is partnering with other maybe portals or entry points. And so yeah, in that case, like if you had a partnership with Expedia, what we usually do is we set up a way that if there's maybe like some marketing content that they've clicked on to navigate them to this purchasing flow, they would have like a refer sort of string that would bring them along and carry all their information so that we could pre-populate everything. That's definitely a use case that we see pretty often, and also these direct-to-consumer cases to further reduce all the data that a person might have to enter and keep things very consistent.
All right, cool. So on sliders, how does the call to generate premium happen seamlessly on move of a slider?
Yeah, so in the case of this application, we actually had built a rater behind the scenes on Unqork. So every time I'm moving the slider, I'm recalling the rater. So that is some cases that we've seen some insurance clients they've chosen to build out their underwriting logic right within Unqork and be able to have those raters run just automatically. We also have quite a few clients where we integrate with something called APIs. So they're basically like ways that we can exchange data very quickly with clients as raters and send maybe the new parameters, the new deductible, their new limit that I've chosen, and get an instant quote and get that quote back and then display it on the screen. So it's everything is kind of just watching the client's actions and then re-triggering the quoting process via these kind of API interactions.
All right, cool. So we have 3 more questions. The first one is, do insurers get a notification post underwriter approval?
Yeah, I think we haven't built this out as part of this flow, but I think email notifications is pretty common. Also, it's a great advantage of having things like these portals with dashboards that clients can navigate to and customers can navigate to, that you could also have like in-app notifications very similar to, what you would be used to on your iPhone or something like that. So I think a common use case for us is email integrations, where we would be able to send you an email every time some actions happen behind the scenes. Or for example, I think I mentioned like once I've started the quote flow, if I've maybe just provide my name and my email, but I drop off, if we capture that email address in the beginning, then we can also kind of watch those flows that might have dropped off and send email notifications or text notifications if we got your phone number to kind of pick the flow back up. So sending those types of interactions with individuals based on email or text and things like that is also a pretty common use case that we've seen on Unqork.
All right, awesome. So we have another question in the console. How difficult would it be to show a side-by-side comparison of 2 versions of the same policy? I.e., in case of endorsements, is there an audit trail of the change of record?
Yes. So I think this is a simple example when I was going through and showing the policy summary for a reinstated policy, but I think for an endorsement, it would be the similar aspect. The way that we build this out on Unqork is whenever an endorsement or like a change is made or reinstatement, we actually create a new copy of that policy that is linked to the original one. And so we essentially have those records. And then within each of those records, we also have full versioning history across any time that a slight change is made. So let's say, as I was going through this flow, every time that I was navigating forward, I was saving the versions. We would save every detail that I've done, and then as maybe the underwriter is updating that quote or providing some additional comments, we save every single version. And so you could have both full side-by-side comparison of maybe an endorsement policy versus the original policy, as well as like full audit of every single data piece at each point in time that like a data was changed, so that you could totally backtrack like all of the interactions that have happened across all of these transactions. I think that's actually one of the more compelling parts about Unqork is like you really capture a lot of data and a lot of like richness of data in terms of how it's changed through the life of each transaction. And then you can aggregate that up into some insights that you might have in terms of like the way that customers are moving through flows, like what's happening at which points in time, and things that can help you continuously improve your business processes. But then it also makes it so that for like the underwriters or the consumers, you can really give them full transparency into like what's going on with their policies, what are they linked to, what was the history of them, and shows things like those side-by-side comparisons pretty easily.
So we have one last question. So can you speak a little bit to how Google integrates with Unqork, specifically in this application?
Yeah, so I'll start over this flow again. In this case, I think we had an example of one of our pre-made integrations. So this is one where we had integrated, let me just click this over, where we had integrated with, we had used a component that we had. And so and that's the address component. And this is one where it's all built in. So meaning that it's a component that, as the integration with Google, is pre-built by Unqork. And so as you type in and search, we're sending that data to Google, and it's returning the most likely addresses that you're looking for. So, pulling up the Google address, but really any address that you would type in, it would start to research for what you were looking for. And you can maybe make it specific to be like prioritize certain areas or things like that. Like we're in New York, so it generally returns New York addresses first. But if you were somewhere else, you could have it return, California addresses first, things like that. So that's one way of doing integrations on Unqork and being able to use those third-party services is we have certain things that are out of the box and you just bring it into your application, drag and drop, really simple. We also have really strong components to help you build out these things manually. So if you wanted to, use a different Google service, you can build it out with something called a plugin component in Unqork, and it's pretty easy. And that's in a case where customers can build out whichever integrations they want, and they don't have to rely on us to pre-build it for them. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of maybe you don't want to use the Google API for address search, maybe you want to use something else, and you can swap those things out quite easily.
Awesome. Great, Laurence. That was all the questions that we have time for, but I wanted to thank everyone for joining today. But we look forward to hosting you guys again. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out at marketing@unqork.com. And thanks again for joining.